The Gauteng Government has returned 2.2 billion of unspent funds back to the National Treasury. Lebogang Maile, the Gauteng Finance MEC, yesterday presented the medium-term adjustment budget before the provincial legislature, and in that briefing, they announced that the Gauteng Government has returned 2.2 billion rands. It's a lot of money back to National Treasury. This is what they said.
In terms of by the end of the financial year, we as the Gauteng Provincial Government, we had not spent the funds that were appropriated to the tune of about 3.4 billion, and we rolled over 1.2 of that. So we're sitting at about 2.2 if you do the arithmetic. So that's the amount that was not committed. Where it was not linked to any invoices, where work was already done and contracts hadn't been signed to that effect. So that's the amount that part of it will be surrendered back to National Treasury for the various departments, because it's national transfers in the form of conditional grants, so it's not our money, and the other amount will go to the Provincial Revenue Fund, which the amount that related to the provincial equitable share. And there will be different reasons for each department why funding was not spent. For example, in August last year, as you are aware, that there was that cost containment circular that was issued by National Treasury. So because before you can, for example, on compensation of employees, remember that's how the budget had already been set by the time this cost containment came in. So what happened was that especially on the part of salaries, compensation of employees, the process of recruiting became, was more protracted. Firstly, you check if the budget is available. PESAL was locked, which is the payroll system, was locked. Only the Office of the Premier could unlock that after they assessed if this is a critical position. So it could still be funded, but is it a critical position? Because you need to remember that compensation of employees is a permanent expenditure item on your budget, because the individual can stay until their retirement. So it's not a cost that you can maneuver and change as you please. Some of them, the procurement process on the goods and services or on the infrastructure projects took longer than anticipated. Therefore, the funds were not committed by the end of the financial year. So in a nutshell, is those particular items, various reasons why the procurement process is not finalized. In certain instances, you would advertise, and you find that the tender is non-responsive, or the proposals you receive are non-responsive. Therefore, you will need to start the process from scratch, meaning that is either your specifications were not well informed, so further market research needs to be done just to understand what is being offered by the sector or the industry, and make sure that your specifications are aligned, and therefore whatever proposals you receive can respond to whatever you had issued out in the market.
That our population numbers were overstated by Stats SA, and as a result, National Treasury is taking an additional 6 billion away from our budget. That's one. Two, I made reference to the under-collection by SARS. So what it means is that, because as you know, there's three sources of funding for provinces: is the equitable share, conditional grant, and own revenue. So the equitable share, now using these different variables to determine what each province must get, they came to a conclusion when they were cutting the budget that they will cut about 15 billion on. So it's not a debt, but it's a it's not even a deficit, but it's an unavoidable cut that is based on availability of resources. So our budget is constrained largely, and of course our service cost to debt it's market related, unfortunately, and that's why when the repo rate is reduced, it also favors us. But HOD and DDG can deal with the details. If
This is incredibly frustrating information, I'm sure, for many residents of Gauteng, because many residents of Gauteng are perplexed how money can be sent back while there are so many prevailing issues within the province. Some of the most recurrent issues, which are pain points for people, are service delivery issues, refuse collection, water disruptions, power disruptions, potholes, maintenance of parks and other public spaces, cleanliness of various municipalities. When compared to the Western Cape, there are stark differences in the quality of management of public spaces, in the quality of management of the province. And a lot of this seems to be financially related. So to hear that money is being sent back will no doubt be frustrating to many people. I mean, from my perspective, just thinking about this number, 2.2 billion, assuming I could hire electricians and plumbers from that particular 2.2 billion to deal with the burst pipes, the multiple electrical issues contributing to load shedding or load reduction or electricity disruption, whatever you want to call it. But if I could hire some electricians and hire some plumbers, according to Google, the average plumber earns 17,000 a month in Johannesburg. Using that number, 17,000, adding 1,000 just to, give a round number, add 1,000 rands to it. Using 18,000 rand as the salary, I could hire for 1 year 10,185 plumbers and electricians to work for Gauteng. 10,185. That's me sitting here talking to you on YouTube, on whatever platform you're watching this on. How is it that 2.2 billion gets sent back unspent? That doesn't make any sense. Another reason this is frustrating is because we heard earlier that Gauteng state schools owe more than 262 million to local municipalities, and Premier Panyaza Lesufu actually urged those municipalities to cut off services to schools that failed to pay their dues. The MEC for Education, Matome Chilowane, revealed that state schools owed millions of rands to municipalities. And when Panyaza Lesufi spoke to News 24 about this, he said municipalities should not show any mercy and must cut schools off just as they would with any other institutions, any other person who owes a municipality. Think about this. Schools are being threatened with cutting off electricity, cutting off services, while money is being sent back. Schools. How does that make any sense? I think one thing that Premier Panyaza Lesufi and the people in his camp, particularly the ANC Gauteng camp, they have lots of ambitions and aspirations. They speak a lot, big goals. But if they truly want to have a pathway to leading the country outright, they have to show that they are able to deliver on the details, the technicalities, the bread and butter issues that affect everybody. Because sometimes there's a lot of political populism. They'll speak about spaza shops, they'll speak about foreigners, they'll speak about nyaupe, they'll speak about all of those things, but they won't necessarily provide the services in the quality that they are required by residents. So while those populist things may have some effect, the question then remains, when you are now saying, choose me, I want to go head to head with Fikile Mbalula, people will have a basis of comparison. Fikile Mbalula will be measured on what he does within the ANC. Panyaza Lesufi will be measured on what he does in the Gauteng province. And if people do not see at their gate, in their home, on their street, an improvement in the quality of life, some of those populist things will not resonate further, because populism can work up to a degree, but you still need to work and you still need to deliver on the bread and butter. People liked Trump in part because they felt they had more money in their pockets They got stimulus checks which were signed by Trump. The economy was performing better under Trump. Some of them do like him for the anti-immigrant rhetoric and a lot of that other stuff. But if you want to have a path to leadership, you can't just think that populism will take you across the line, especially when they're rivals, especially when the issues of populism that you are trying to speak on or lead on are contested issues. That's just something that they have to be aware of. And still on this schools issue, there's another story that came up, and I think it's worth putting here because education is so critical. And it feels to me that the politicians treat education like a pile of dirty dishes in a sink that hasn't been attended to for maybe 3-4 days. They don't want to touch it. They don't want to deal with it properly. And it just gets kicked down the road, kicked down the road, kicked down the road. I was very bothered that we could even have rhetoric around, cutting off services for school kids. Obviously, the Premier did say that, look, we're not going to do it during exams. We're not going to do it during sensitive times, to be fair to him. But still, a school is supposed to be a sanctuary, a center for imagination and inspiration for children. Their only refuge in avalanche of violence, corruption, abuse. The school is supposed to be a sanctuary, incubator. It's not supposed to be one of the places that we take away the dreams or the capacity to achieve of young people, especially knowing that that was the design of the apartheid system, that was what Hendrik Verwoerd wanted. So there's a story here that, with the other stories that were dominating, didn't get enough attention. And I think sometimes the media doesn't amplify stories that are worthy of attention and make them crisis points, because this one is. The Basic Education Department built one school in the last year, but its target was 9. The school that was built replaced one that had been built from inappropriate materials. The Department of Basic Education says that the target for the construction of new schools was not achieved because of National Treasury budget cuts. The department launched the Accelerated Schools Infrastructure Delivery Initiative, in 2011 to eradicate the backlog of schools without water, sanitation, and electricity, and to replace schools built of mud, wood, and asbestos. It's a noble aspiration. 2011. It's 14 years ago. 2011. It's a noble aspiration. It's a noble goal to remove and eradicate the backlog of schools without water, sanitation, electricity, replace mud schools, wood schools, asbestos roof schools. They've had some time to do that from 2011, 13 years. We're going into 2025 now, so it's about 14 years because this year is basically over. How have they done? Only 337 schools have been built since the project's inception. 337 schools since 2011. That's an average of 24 schools a year across the country in 14 years. That's not good. There are 22,511 public schools in South Africa, and a large percentage of those schools are in quintiles 1, 2, and 3. These were the schools which under the apartheid regime were supposed to be the ones that serve the black community. These are the schools which need to be rebuilt and refurbished. Many of them are in townships, many of them are in rural areas. If you are moving at a pace of 337 schools every 14 years, at what point will you reach 22,511, or let's say half of that? At no point. At no point. The Department of Basic Education admitted all of this, if you're wondering where the information is coming from. In its annual report, it said, look, the number of new schools completed through this accelerated school program was not achieved, and the department had to delay the contracting of service providers in keeping with cost containment measures, which were issued by the National Treasury, and the subsequent in-year budget cut. The school infrastructure backlog grant was cut by 179.8 million, and according to the department, that impacted on the completion of planned projects. The projects will then be rolled over to the new financial year. Implementation of those projects will be supported by budget availability. It's true that there have been budget cuts. In the past financial year, the Department of Basic Education had a 2 billion budget for the school infrastructure backlog grant, and they had 12.2 billion for the EIG. Now, what happened is National Treasury, and the EIG is the Education Infrastructure Grant, So the National Treasury revealed in the 2024 midterm budget policy statement, which was given on the 30th of October, that Cabinet had approved reductions of 1.2 billion to the school infrastructure backlog grant and 611 million to the education infrastructure grant. So the money that is supposed to be available for the building of schools, for fixing these issues, is being cut. This is what austerity looks like. This is the new dawn. This is what the Ramaphosa administration is doing to children. And Treasury said that this will result in projects that are still in the planning phase being delayed so that those that are currently being implemented can be completed. Sounds reasonable, sounds mature. But if you think that they're only doing one in 2024, a school, and the backlog is large and they've only done 337, cutting the budget and saying, let's just finish the ones that we're doing, it's so few, it's minuscule, if we're being honest. There's an amount of 5.3 billion which has been allocated for the period between 2024 to 2027. And this is supposed to replace 100 inappropriate and unsafe schools and to provide sanitation to 320 more. But I don't think this money is enough, and I don't think the progress that is being made is sufficient. It's really disappointing to hear about this low rate of achievement in fixing backlogs, in fixing mud schools, in fixing pit toilets. It's disappointing considering the importance of education in building a nation and lifting its economic prospects. Children, anybody who's worked with children will tell you this. They're infinitely capable. They have boundless potential. They are brilliant. This idea that maybe it's only suburban kids or white kids or Asian kids who can do maths, do science, become geniuses, that's just a fallacy. It's just a product of observation, observing the outcome and deducing certain things based on correlation, not on causation. Because if you see, Asia is doing well in maths, Asians are good at maths. No. They have a system that helps them to become good at maths. If you want to have the same outcomes, you have to have the same system. In fact, maths was developed in Africa, right? The universities in Timbuktu, the developments in Egypt, all of these things were happening in Africa. But obviously, history has happened. Developments have been lost. The point I'm trying to make, though, is that children are not the problem here. They're not the rate limiting step or the success limiting step. It's the leaders that are the problem. Children have infinite capability. They are boundless in potential. All they need are resources, stimulation, inspiration, and discipline. They do need discipline, especially the boys when they become teenagers. The fact that only one school was built out of a target of 9 is disappointing. And even the target of 9 itself, just think about it. 9 is low as a target. To fail to get 1 out of 9, that's disappointing. Now they're saying that they have an ambitious target of completing 30 by next year. 30 when you did 1 this year. Please, man. How are you? What differences are you going to make between now and March? It's November. What bothers me even further is that we're not touching on the issues of quality of teaching and learning. And I'm going to tell you more about this now. Every year, the Department of Basic Education publishes a series of reports on their website. For instance, they'll publish the National Certificate Report, the School Performance Report, the School Subject Report, a bunch of reports. For me, the most insightful reports are the diagnostic reports. These reports are based on reviews of exam scripts which are randomly selected. The diagnostic report has a purpose to provide teachers, subject advisors, curriculum planners, and social partners with insights into learners' performance. And according to the diagnostic report itself, its pivotal purpose is to serve as a catalyst to improve the quality of teaching and learning through reflection and remediation. So you're supposed to look at this data and fix for the problems identified. Some of the information that you get out of these reports. Last year, 691,160 students wrote the exams out of 715,000 who were enrolled. Okay, so 691,000 wrote out of 715,000 who were enrolled. What did the diagnostic assessments around the key subjects? Because they've got different ones, right? So they've got content subjects and they've got key subjects, which are the most popular subjects, which are identified as key subjects. Subjects like accounting, economics, maths, physical science, those kind of subjects. So what do we learn there? Firstly, a low number of students are doing maths and physical science, and an even lower number are doing computer applications, technology, CAT, IT, even lower. Here's the reality. Do you want to know? 691,000 students wrote the exams. Only 262,000 wrote maths. About a third. Already you're heading the wrong direction. Everyone should be doing maths. Maths literacy, the fact that we think that, no, some people are not good at maths is not a reflection on the people. It's a reflection on the system. Maths does not discriminate. There's no genetic predisposition for saying 1 + 1 is 2. It's not a genetic thing. A low number of people are writing maths. And of that 262,000 who wrote maths, only 27.5% passed with over 50%. Only 15.7% passed with over 60%. How many wrote physical science? 206,000 students wrote physical science. Only 31% of that number passed with over 50%. Only 17.1% passed with over 60%. 206,000 out of 691,000 wrote physical science. That's not good. And only 31% passed. That's not good. So there's a pattern that repeats in many of the key subjects. Pattern that repeats for many of the key subjects for professions which are related to technical and scientific work. I'm going to tell you what that pattern is just now. Let's be very clear before I continue. You still need to be competent in maths and physics to be a good mechanic. So if you're thinking in your mind right now, no, but not everyone is going to do maths. Some people need to work with their hands. You still need to be competent in maths and physics to be a good mechanic, to work as an electrician. We often pretend that learning these skills and getting these certifications, learning these subjects, is for the people who don't do well at school. You know, I'm talking about the vocational subjects. We pretend that, no, vocational subjects are for the people who don't do well, the ones who must work with their hands. My father was a plumber. My uncle is an electrician in a mine. My other uncle is a locomotive mechanic. Not my other uncle, my other uncle. He's a locomotive mechanic. And I can tell you, having grown up around these men, these are very technical jobs that require you to have English comprehension at a high level, scientific comprehension at a high level. You have to read many equipment manuals. If they change the machine, you have to read that manual. You have to understand how to operate it. You need to be sharp. There's a lot of problem solving. You sometimes have to calculate things. You sometimes have to make specific tools. Use metalwork to make tools if there's no tool available to do a specific thing that you're trying to do. You need to know, what is it called? That drawing for engineers. You need to know that technical drawing. That's what it's called. You need to be able to draw at a high level. You need to be able to make scientific calculations. You need to understand your geometry, your physics. Even as a mechanic, Let's not create this perception that, you know, it's okay that people are not doing well in maths and science, physical science, because not everyone needs these subjects. A lot of people actually do need these subjects in the spaces that we've identified that there are shortages. People are saying there's a shortage of engineers, there's a shortage of plumbers, electricians, technical workers, nurses. All of these people need to be good at these subjects. It's not just about changing diapers, being a nurse. There's more to it than that. Let's be honest. Let's be honest when we have a conversation. And by the way, the TVETs, the Technical and Vocational Education Training Colleges, have a 9.2% throughput rate. What that means is that 91% of the people who start do not complete the program on time or at all. The throughput rate for civil engineering and building construction is 6.6%. The throughput rate for electrical infrastructure and construction is 5.2%. The throughput rate for information technology and computer science is 4.8%. The throughput rate for mechatronics is 10.4%. Do you see that these numbers are not acceptable? Part of the reason is because a lot of kids who don't make it are told, no, just go to a TVET. As if that will solve the failures of the education system to provide them with the baseline that they need to succeed even in a TVET. These are the issues that are still persisting in the education system. So why are these kids failing? It's not their fault, by the way, but here are the issues that were identified in the diagnostic report for the key subjects. There's a lack of skill in reading with meaning. What the report says, a topical issue affecting examination performance of learners. A topical issue affecting examination performance are learners who lack the skill of reading with meaning, comprehension. Weak learners tend to focus selectively on words in a question that are easily recognizable and then attempt to provide a response that does not fit the context of the question. Other learners might tend to repeat or paraphrase questions or scenarios in their responses, while some attempt to repeat answers from previous questions. It's a problem that has been identified. Lack of skill of reading with meaning. Lack of critical thinking skills. The report says it was evident from some of the candidates' responses that they lacked the skill to analyze and evaluate information critically, leading to superficial responses rather than demonstrating a deep understanding of the material. There was difficulty in applying theoretical knowledge to solve practical problems. Another problem identified, poor time management skills. This resulted in incomplete examinations or rushed responses, affecting the overall quality of the answers. It was observed that candidates spent a considerable amount of time on introductory questions, which resulted in them not responding well to later parts of examination papers. Another problem identified, poor communication. Effective communication is a key in responding adequately to questions. Expressing ideas clearly and concisely is crucial, and it was noted that many candidates lack the ability to communicate effectively in writing, reading, writing, critical thinking, time management skills. A lack of attention to detail can result in errors in calculations, misinterpretation of questions, or oversight of important information. Lack of research skills. Research plays a pivotal role in candidates' ability to synthesize information. According to the report, in 2023, it was apparent that a large percentage of candidates were unable to locate and use relevant information effectively in their responses. This highlights the need for improved research and information retrieval skills. Memorization of exam papers. What the report says is that a good quality paper should not be predictable. The 2023 question papers included novel images, scenarios, and texts. It was noted that many candidates found it challenging to link the known and familiar subject matter to unfamiliar and abstract contexts. There was a clear lack of understanding of concepts and a reliance on having memorized past papers. These things are happening. Lack of numeracy skills identified by the report. Numeracy skills across the curriculum are an indispensable part of teaching and learning. In subjects requiring mathematical proficiency, it was noted that some candidates lack basic numeracy skills. The decline in performance in mathematical literacy is primarily due to candidates' lack of understanding of fundamental numerical concepts and principles. This is what the diagnostic report said. So if you're building one school out of 9, 337 in 14 years, when are you going to deal with these issues? When are you going to deal with these issues? If you're failing to build enough schools to replace the schools that are not fit for purpose, mud schools, wood schools, when will you be able to tackle the issues addressed by the diagnostic reports that you prepare for reflection and remediation? China is not waiting for anyone. Taiwan is not waiting for anyone. South Korea is not waiting. India is not waiting. Elon Musk is not waiting. The future of work is changing right before our eyes. And Africa is falling further behind because we're building one school a year. It's very troubling. So that's where I want to leave it, guys. What do you think? Let's have a conversation. Till the next one.